Prepare the way, prepare the way, prepare the way of the Lord.
Some Sadducees, those who deny that there is a resurrection, came forward and put this question to Jesus, saying, "Teacher, Moses wrote for us, if someone's brother dies, leaving a wife but no child, his brother must take the wife and raise up descendants for his brother. Now, there were 7 brothers. The first married a woman but died childless. Then the second and the third married her, and likewise all the 7 died childless. Finally, the woman also died. Now, at the resurrection, whose wife will that woman be? For all 7 had been married to her." Jesus said to them, "The children of this age marry and remarry. But those who are deemed worthy to attain to the coming age and to the resurrection of the dead, neither marry nor are given in marriage. They can no longer die, for they are like angels, and they are the children of God, because they are the ones who will rise. That the dead will rise, even Moses made known in the passage about the bush, when he called out, 'Lord, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob.' And he is not the God of the dead, but of the living. For to him all are alive." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Here we go. So if you paid attention to the Gospel today, it should have bugged you. And this is one of the Gospels that bugs people. Right? Because Jesus in our gospel today essentially says there's no marriage in heaven. In fact, take out the word essentially. Jesus says there is no marriage in heaven. Take that. No, just kidding. We'll get to that. Sorry, I couldn't resist. So I am a total melancholic. I'm a romantic. I always have been. I always will be. And so one of my parents used to always say, when I was a kid growing up, they're like, the first girl Brian falls in love with, that's the girl he's going to marry. And that didn't go so well. But Keith Urban, right? I love these sappy love songs sometimes. Keith Urban has a great one. And he has a song called "Making Memories of Us." And he has this line in there. He says, and he's talking to, I don't know, his wife or some woman. It's a love song. And he says, "I'm going to make you this promise. If there's life after this, right, I'm going to make you this promise. If there's life after this, I'm going to be there to meet you with a warm, wet kiss." And when I feel that, when I listen to that song, like in seminary or as a priest, I'm like, not even in heaven? Like, what the heck? All these people who are married get this. And Jesus today sounds like a downer. Right? Keith Urban's like, "I'm going to be there, darling, and meet you with a warm, wet kiss." And Jesus is going to be there, and he's going to be like, "Nope, room for the Holy Spirit." Right? And the natural question you should have if you're a married person, or if you're on your way to marriage, the natural question, and a very good question, is, am I not going to be married to my spouse in heaven? And this scares a lot of people. And the answer is no, you won't. And we got to unpack that. And here's what I hope you have by the end of the day, by the end of this homily, is that the news that you and your spouse will not be married in heaven is not a reason to be sad. It's a reason for profound joy. And let me just, in case I don't get to it, every once in a while I get through a homily, I'm like, dang it, I never got back to that point. Let me just tell you, give you the summation right now. In heaven, you will not love your spouse less than you love them now. In heaven, you will not be less close to your spouse than you are here. You will love your spouse in heaven far more than you ever did on earth. And they will love you far more than you were ever loved by them on earth. But you will love everyone that way. The love of heaven is not less than earth. The love of heaven is infinitely greater than any love this world can offer. We got to break that open. But brothers and sisters, Jesus' teaching on heaven today is so powerful, it's so profound, and it's something that needs to change us. It's something that needs to change the way we live right now. It's something that needs to change the way we think about marriage, about virginity, about our life as Christians on this earth. And here's what it's about. We all know this. Keith Urban, what he's doing in that song, I think he's married to Nicole Kidman, is that right? Don't pretend like you don't know. Right? All the women are like, uh-huh. Yeah, People Magazine tells me so. The guy's like, I don't care. All right, yes you do. I know you know. Here's the thing, Keith Urban in that song, and I have done it. I have done it in my life so many times. We've all done it. One of the things we do as human beings is that we make marriage an idol. One of the best novels ever written by Evelyn Waugh called Brideshead Revisited. It's a Catholic novel. It's about an affair. So it's not the same as marriage, but there's a parallel I want to get to. And at the end of the book, there's this famous line that I just love. If you're going to read Brideshead Revisited and you haven't yet, spoiler alert, my guess is most of you probably won't because you don't listen to anything I tell you. Okay, but here's what Julia says. She left the church. And she left the church because she didn't love her husband anymore. And she fell in love with somebody else. That never happens today. And the church says, and here's where we're going with this, the church says the love of heaven is so amazing, it is so powerful, it is so beyond anything you have ever dreamed of, nothing on earth is worth losing it for. Nothing on earth. The Catholic Church looks harsh. If you've been divorced and the church says you can't remarry, the church looks harsh. How could you do that to someone? Today's gospel touches on so many controversies with the modern world. How could people of the same sex who are attracted to each other not get married? Doesn't that seem harsh? Not if you believe in heaven. And my contention to you today is that we don't. We don't believe in heaven. And so if you don't have a great marriage on earth, your life is meaningless. And I've got good news for you. That's a lie. It's a complete and total lie, and it is straight from hell. Marriage is the best thing on earth, and something far better awaits you. So Julia knows that she's breaking God's law. She knows it. And she leaves the church, as so many do today, because she thinks the only happiness can be an earthly happiness. And so in Julia, at the end of the book, it is so powerful, it's so beautiful. She has this powerful conversion. And the man she's in this affair with, she breaks up with him. And she says, I can't marry you, Charles. I can't be with you ever again. And he doesn't get it. He knew it was coming, but he doesn't understand. And Julia goes through this explanation, but she says this. She says, the bad thing that I was on the point of doing, right? I was this close to doing something that was so bad. The bad thing I was on the point of doing that I'm not quite bad enough to do is to set up a rival good to God's. the bad thing I was about to do, that I'm not quite bad enough to do, is to set up a rival good to God's. We don't believe in heaven. And today, the good news of the Gospels, brothers and sisters, is heaven is real. And it's not a well-wishing sentiment. It's not a Hallmark card. Heaven is real. Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and you cannot explain the rise of Christianity in the ancient world except for that. Jesus rose from the dead. Heaven is real. And what we do is we don't believe in heaven, and so we say, you know what? I've got to live for marriage and for romance. My friend Father Matt, I was talking to him last night, and I was like, what are you preaching on this weekend? And he said, kind of similar themes, and he said, you know, I told my people that heaven is not just this life with room service. When you think of heaven, right, we think of heaven as this life. It's just like now, but there's room service. Homilies are a little shorter, right? My patience is a little longer, right? That's not heaven. That is not heaven. That is not heaven. St. Paul tells us that what God has prepared for those who love him, no eye has seen, no ear has heard. Brothers, heaven is far more than anything you could possibly dream of. And here's the lie. Here's one of the practical things I want to get to today is that when we don't hope for God's hope, we set up other things in its place. Right? And so marriage becomes, and today, right, for every one of us here today, this is true. If you're in a great marriage, you know that marriage is good, but you also know it's not the ultimate. You know that. The only people who don't know that are those of you who are engaged or in your first month of marriage. Everyone else knows that. If you're engaged, you've completely blinded yourself to your fiance's faults, right? But if you've been married 5 years, you know that marriage is very good. But it's not the ultimate. If you're not married, if you're a single person, right? The temptation, people come to me all the time and they say, Father Brian, God can't really love me. If I don't get married, can I really be whole? Can I have a place in this life? People ask that question because you and I don't believe in heaven. And we think if we don't get married, our life is worthless. That is anti-Christian. Heaven far exceeds anything this world has to offer. And so Jesus today says, those who are worthy to attain the resurrection of the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. And here's why. I could go really deep here, and we're going to kind of skim a little bit here because this is a long topic. But brothers and sisters, marriage, or heaven, is a marriage. It is a marriage. The book of Revelation describes heaven as the marriage feast of Jesus Christ. Heaven is a marriage. But it's the marriage of God with his church. And it's worth living for. And I want to shift here just a little bit. What this does practically, I want to skip a little bit to practicals. What does this do for our life? If you're a Christian, heaven relativizes the things of earth. If you're a Christian, heaven relativizes the things of earth. If you are a Christian, heaven relativizes the things of earth. The big three things that all of us are called to, especially priests and religious, but I will challenge you, every single one of you is called to poverty, chastity, and obedience. Every one of you. The world says money is everything, you know? But if you're a Christian, money is relativized. You can't say money is evil. It's not. But like my friend Curtis always says, he says, if you're a Christian, you know that at the end of the day that money is monopoly money. You need it to get through life. It's not evil. You can use it for great purposes. You can be smart about it. That's all good and fine. But you know, in a way that non-Christians don't, that it's monopoly money. And so you don't worship money because you know that heaven's real. And you know when I've told you this before, but when I was in seminary, right, and you know my heart's still not converted, someday, Jesus, please, right, I would walk through these neighborhoods around the seminary, and there's all these beautiful homes, and what I was doing is I was like basically making heaven into earth with room service, and I walked through these neighborhoods praying the rosary, and like I'm supposed to be meditating on the agony in the garden, I'm like, man, that's a nice house. Like, hey God, can I have a house like that in heaven? That's not heaven. It's not heaven. Heaven is not, I was celibate in this life and I was pretty poor, and so maybe I have like a house that's wicked cool in heaven. Take that, Kanye West. I don't know. That's not heaven. What no eye has seen, no ear has heard, God has prepared for those who love him. And money, as Christians, is a good thing, but it's relativized. I do not worship it, and neither do you. Marriage and sexuality are great goods. Right, so the first counsel is poverty. You can be wealthy and you can be poor as a Christian because you know that it's monopoly money. And you know that all that matters is heaven. And you use the good things of earth for the one thing that matters. Chastity is the same way. Sexuality is good, it's beautiful. Marriage is good, it's wonderful. I think marriage is the best thing on earth. But we do not worship it. You were not created for marriage, you were created for heaven. And so if your marriage doesn't go perfectly, it's okay. You try your best, you love your spouse, you try to love in the way that Christ does. If you never get married, it's hard, it's okay. If you are called to celibacy the way I am, or virginity as a consecrated singular religious, right? You are a sign of the kingdom of God. Part of what the church teaches about celibacy, because of today's gospel and others, is that virgins in the world who are Christians, their life is a sign that heaven is real. Because the best thing on earth is marriage. But there's something even better. The last one is obedience. Right? The world worships freedom right now. Right? Freedom is everything. As Christians, we love freedom, but it's relativized. If you use your freedom to do whatever the heck you want to do at all times and all places, and freedom means nobody can tell me what to do, that is not a freedom that is ordered towards heaven. Christians know that freedom belongs to what is good. There is no freedom for evil. There is only freedom for the good, which is why Christ can sacrifice his freedom out of love for us. Right? We're called to these things. And I want to, last part of the homily, these are the practical things. Brothers and sisters, you got to stop telling your kids that romance is everything. You got to stop telling them that, and you got to stop telling yourselves that. Romance is not everything. The love of God is everything. And if you're married today, if you're a married person, your marriage, just like my virginity, is called to be on the way to the love of God. Your marriage as a Christian marriage should not look the way other marriages look, because you know that you were not created for your marriage. You and your spouse love each other to heaven, to the love that surpasses all things. for which nothing is worth losing the love of heaven for. Nothing. We think differently about these things. Lastly today, why does virginity matter? This is very prescient. I'm not even sure I know what that word means, but let's just go with it. It's very prescient at this time. Someone tell me after Mass. The Amazon Synod, people are debating about whether or not it's important for priests to be celibate and virgins. And there's people in the church calling and saying we need to have married priests. We'll have more priests that way. And it's a complex issue, and I don't want to totally give just a one answer to that. But I will tell you this, everything in that discussion right now, and oftentimes here, celibacy and virginity are reduced to practical. Well, Father Brian doesn't get married because he needs to be available to go to the hospital. Father Brian doesn't get married because he's celibate by default. No, just kidding. You remember that distinction? In seminary, we'd always talk about, are you celibate by default or by choice? Like, basically, could you have gotten a date if you tried? That's what it means. And I'm like, come on, Lord, I'm by choice. I could have gotten a date, I promise. Why are priests virgins? And I know I'm going a little long, but hang with me. Here's what you got to ask along with that question. Why are Jesus and Mary both virgins? Why are Jesus and Mary both virgins? And here's the church's answer, and it's super deep, and I hope you'll go home today and pray with this. What St. Paul teaches in 1 Corinthians 7, and what all early Christians believe about Mary being perpetually a virgin. People will come to me all the time, they'll say, who cares if Mary was a virgin her whole life? Brothers and sisters, this is central to our faith. Absolutely central, and here's why. Mary's virginity is the sign that everything in her is about heaven. Virginity, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7, as he says, if you're living a married life, it's good, it's a holy thing, but your heart's going to be divided. And it's hard to give your heart wholly and completely to God. It's easier, let's say, it can be easier if you're not married to do that. The reason the church cares so much that Mary is perpetually virgin is because Mary's entire soul, everything, was given over to God. And priestly virginity, the official teaching of the Catholic Church, is not that priests don't marry so that they can be busier. As I always say, so stop calling me, right? I am not celibate to answer your needs, right? And that's true. I love you. A priest is celibate because we believe that spiritual union with God is the heart of Christianity. I am not celibate so I can be busier. I am celibate so that my entire heart, soul, mind, and body can belong to God. These are deep waters. Brothers and sisters, today, if you're married, your marriage needs to look different from people who are not Christians. Your love for your spouse is called to lead to the only love that lasts eternally, which is the love of God. If you're single and you're not married, right? Do not put your hopes in marriage. Marriage is good, but it is not the final good. If you fall in love and get married, wonderful. Praise God, it is a good thing. But it is not your salvation. Your salvation is Christ. If you are divorced, if you're in a marriage that's difficult, love the way Christ loves, but your hope is not in marriage. Your hope is in heaven. Jesus May heaven relativize earth. Lord, I believe in heaven. I believe in the resurrection of the dead. May my faith and may the faith of every person here be so strong that we do not place our hopes in earthly things. But Jesus, may you be our hope.